Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Mushing Alaska podcast. Brendan and Sean here. Bro, how's it going, man? How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's April. Crazy. It's over.
It's crazy how quickly it goes, man.
That was the quickest month of my life.
Very nice, very nice. So how was what were you doing over on the glacier today?
Oh yeah, just stomping around on the glacier with some folks from Seattle. And it was awesome. Just beautiful place, Mount Niska Glacier. You should check it out if you get a chance. It's a fun gig doing the guiding out there for sure. Just driving people out, doing a day trip and grabbing some lunch and coming back.
Nice.
This moment was brought to you by Great Land Adventures.
This moment brought to you by Well, good stuff, man. I wanted to get back with you and do some more kind of recap, breakdown of the Iditarod. Last time we got together, I feel like we just scratched the surface, if I'm being honest. We really focused a lot on some of those checkpoints that you had been at and kind of talked a little bit about your experience. And so I really enjoyed that, and hopefully those of you who have listened to that enjoyed that as well. But we got to kind of actually break the race down, So I kind of wanted to do that and just kind of like talk about some of our favorite storylines and just anything else like that. And so, as some folks kind of trickle in, if there's any questions you have about the race or anything that you want us to discuss, feel free to drop your questions in there. But let's, I was thinking we could kind of break the race down into 3 sections, there's the race to like your 24, there's the race to, the Yukon, and then there's like the race to the coast kind of thing. I don't know. You probably have a different perspective than I do about the race, but you would say the first third of the race is the race to the 24 checkpoint, right?
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well. Yeah, setting up the race for your 24-hour break. Do you want them to be tired enough to want to chill out for 24 hours, but not too tired that they can't get back to where they need to be in 24 hours. And so picking that spot, there's a lot of right places you can do it. It's usually somewhere between McGrath and Cripple. And honestly, Dallas 24 and Cripple, like I wonder when the last person that 24 and Cripple, I wonder if there's like a musher watching that knows if Robert Reddington or something's watching. You have the interesting to know who was the last person to win the Iditarod 24 in Cripple, because it's not like the most common place to 24, but it's certainly worked in the past with multiple mushers. But the race to the 24, then you come out of your 24 and you don't want to go get too competitive, but you want to just be within a shot, and then keep your team strong and then see if you can make some kind of move maybe, or maybe just make a push at the coast. So, yeah.
So, yeah, for that first third of the race, I would say it was kind of between Jesse, Dallas, and I think that was mostly, I guess you could say Travis as well. He was shaping up, but I felt like his move really was in that second half of the race. But what were your thoughts? Like, obviously seeing Dallas and Jesse up there at the top, that's kind of probably something to be expected. I guess I was surprised at Dallas being up there so early. In years past, when I've watched Dallas generally is maybe kind of like creeping his way slowly up towards that top 10, and maybe it's the bib number, but he was making his move, or not move, but he was at the top early on. But what was your thoughts about just the first third of the race, or what was your perspective with that top of the pack? I know you were at some of those checkpoints in that first third of the race, so just any thoughts on that?
Well, from my recollection, it's all just from recollection. But I think maybe Dallas was up near the front for like, I mean, Finger Lake is like the second checkpoint, and that's when he got there. He had the Moose encounter and the 3 hour. He had kind of a delay, that maybe didn't happen until after Finger Lake, but yeah, that's when he had to take. I guess he did kind of go first out into Cripple, but that was one of those things where like, that was because everybody else was already taking their 24. So like you go out to Cripple, you're like, it's deceiving. It looks like, oh, it's like he's way out in front. No one's even left Ophir, and he's 50 miles from Ophir, but that's because literally everybody else didn't take their 24 in Cripple. He was the only person. And so everybody on the trail had stopped for 24 hours. So he got like, no, it looked like he was like 70 or 80 miles out in front, but you knew once that penalty was coming that wasn't going to be the case after he leaves his 24. But it can be deceiving before those rests. You have the mandatory rests and whatnot. And so it's kind of tricky.
And do you feel like, because Dallas hasn't traditionally stopped in Cripple, I think maybe he has a few times, but that's usually not his move. Do you think that once he kind of saw how things were shaping up with Travis, and then also once he, got that penalty, that like Cripple, if he had done anything earlier than that, it wouldn't have been to his advantage. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
I think that's correct. Yeah. It wouldn't have been to his advantage. I remember hearing him say while I was out there something along the lines of, if I had stopped in Ophir, like all my other options, didn't make sense. They would have been too well rested going into their 24. So he felt like he had to make the push. But also at the same time, it was a slow trail. But it turned out it wasn't like, it was kind of slow for everybody. There was maybe teams were going half a mile an hour faster, which is significant, I guess. But, it seems obviously he made the right move, but it didn't seem like the right move, I bet, to him in the moment. That's he's like gone through Ophir, and now it's like, well, I've committed, and you got 70 miles to sit there on the sled and think about it. Like, shit. But but yeah, obviously it worked out.
And yeah, I was in that first third of the race, Jesse was really foot on the gas. I'm sitting here kind of like, as we talk, I'm looking, just watching the replay and like pausing it and playing it again. But I wish that was something that he could have kept up. I know that he kind of talked about his dogs not having it there for a little bit, maybe like in some of the second part of the race, the second third of the race. And I wonder if I wonder what was just going on there. I would love to talk to him and get him back on and just kind of hear things. I know that he's got the Cobuck coming up, so I'm sure he's going to be looking to second or third place in the Iditarod and then follow up his Cobuck. But I just would love to see what was going on there, because I know he had like coming in strong, and I don't know. I felt like the race for Jesse kind of seemed to taper off a little bit there in the second half of the race. I don't know. Just like looking at it now, I'm like, man, he was just like zooming on through. Just thoughts on Jesse's race in general, or just, I mean, did you have any interactions with him out there on the trail or anything like that?
Yeah, I saw him a good bit. I think that I don't know. I wasn't the one that was like looking at his dog team, but it seemed like they were strong all the way through the race. But you know, I'm not the guy on the back of the sled, and he took some extra rest and Caltag and on at Old Woman Cabin as well, and at Unalakleet like stacked up. I think that was his runs. So he, pretty conservative from New Lotto to go New Lotto, Caltag, Old Woman, Unalakleet. And it's just so that was, opened the door for other people. Travis had his, long, unexpectedly long journey from Caltag to Unalakleet that brought him back down, back with the chasing pack. And then Dallas just kind of did his thing or whatever. I mean, he just kind of, but I think he ran New Lotto to Caltag, that's a 34, 36 mile run, rested 2.5, and then ran from Caltag to Old Woman because it was kind of chilly, that's kind of conservative, and that's a 40-mile run. It's not even like a crazy move. And then he rested, 3.5, 4 hours there. And then he went through, what did he do? I don't remember if he camped out past Unalakleet, and that's where he began that kind of set up his whole coast once he made that decision. But it wasn't like he did these like monster runs. Really, he didn't do anything over. He did that one run, obviously, at the end there before coming into White Mountain. That was a long run. But, he was coming into an 8-hour rest, too. So, 70 going into an 8-hour rest. So, yeah, that was, it was just like, I don't know. I'm not like a master of like strategy and stuff, but it just seemed like he didn't really make some like crazy move, but he just made a kind of like a just general, like, I'm here knocking at the door. And dude, I talked to Dad, and he was like, Dallas is like Tiger Woods on a Sunday wearing a red shirt, and then like anyone that's in the group with him is like, oh shit, like Dallas is like on the trail. And like, I wonder if that affects just like your decision making, and if you're not familiar with golf, the Tiger Woods in his prime, if you're playing with him, you just be like, oh my God, I got to play against Tiger Woods. I'm in trouble, and it affects the way that they end up playing. I don't think that maybe happened, but maybe it did. I don't know. It was, but yeah, it was just a solid race, an incredible comeback for Dallas, of course. But yeah, he didn't make a big, crazy move.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was no, I logged all of his runs, but I don't have that right in front of me. And you're correct. He had that one long run into White Mountain. He had the run to Nome. Those were two of the longer ones. And I think outside of those two runs, he had like one other run that was, I can't remember if I think it was 8:45, but I think it was the run into his 24. So like all of his longer runs were all into a 24, an 8-hour, and the end of the race. But on that note that you were talking about with Dad, it brought a smile to my face, because that is it really is a good comparison. Tiger Woods, these golf tournaments, if you're not familiar, they have 4 rounds, right? So on the last day, Tiger would normally be, if he was always on Sunday, he would wear red. And it's like, it's almost like an intimidation factor or whatever. And I feel like the equivalent to Dallas or to Tiger putting on his Sunday red was, after his 24-hour, he made those, I think it was like within 2 or 3 runs, he was boom in first place. I think it was 2 runs. I remember going to sleep and he was behind by like 4 hours. And then I woke up and he was already in first. So yeah, I really feel like Dallas put on a masterclass, honestly. Like he did it, and if you go back and you look at his or listen to his interviews, he doesn't feel like he has a super team. He feels like he's rebuilding, like in the future. I don't know if he's running next year or not. But like, I don't think he's looking to keep that same team that won this year. I think he's looking to like rebuild. His ability to do that with all the adversity that he was up against, with the run-in with the Moose, with the time penalty. But then like once he got to the coast, it was like he was done, and that's, I guess I need to go back and kind of keep notes, but like, that's yet again another time where, I hear a lot of, oh, well, the race doesn't start till you get to the coast. But like, I haven't really experienced that as a fan, like last year, I guess, Ryan made those runs, those pushes. And ultimately what happened last year kind of felt like this year. You had Pete and Richie in what became a race for second, and same could be said with Jesse and Matt Hall. It wasn't really like, oh, who's going to give Dallas a chance here? It was more like who's going to get second. So, I don't know. Any thoughts on just anything that I've just said? Anything pop into your mind? Any reactions there?
Yeah. Obviously it's crazy because like everybody else in the Iditarod that's trying to win, Matt Hall and Jesse Holmes and Paige Drobny, are just Jeff Dieter, so tough and really well organized at being able to pull something like this logistically off, but also just put together a series of good decisions out on the trail. Their abilities, what Matt Hall, Jeff Dieter, Paige, Jesse, Pete Kaiser, Milla, Amanda, all these, Jesse Roy, all these people are so talented. I mean, absolutely incredible mushers, incredible dog people. I mean, for Dallas to like beat that caliber of musher, and then look back, in 2012, his first Iditarod, when there was 70 or 80 teams in the race, and a number of Iditarods after that as well, and yeah, it's just it's not like, it's just crazy to be this dominant in with a sport with so many variables. Like, there's no, it's such an ever changing race to like be able to face like 10 different flavors of adversity and do it, perfectly. Yeah, it just is. It's just such a I don't know how he's beating these people 6 times. It just is crazy because they're so good. That's why it just is. It's impressive. And then shout out to the humility of Dallas too. He's not being like 6, I won 6, like in your face. I would, he's like never, obviously no one would do that, but he's just like never even mentions that he won. Maybe he did once or twice, but I haven't seen it, that he's got the record, is officially the GOAT. But we can stop talking about Dallas because we talked for like 15 minutes about him. But yeah, he's the GOAT for sure. Good guy.
Okay. Well, at some point we'll get Dallas on and I will enjoy picking his brain a little bit, and I'm sure it'll be a long episode when we have him on, just because he's He's just so well spoken and has a lot to say, and I look forward to getting him on at some point. I'm sure he's probably got a bunch of stuff on his plate and then taking some time off, but he is definitely going to be someone that we'll get to. Let's see, Kara.
I'll strong arm him.
Yeah. You can, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, he can make some time for us. Yeah, I know that we're like literally bottom of the list for him, but we'll see.
He gets nothing out of this, but he'd
have some fun. He'd have some fun with it.
For sure.
And yeah, Kara just said she was impressed, that Dallas was able to kind of stay focused after the moose incident. And
I also wanted to say, in Nikolai, I saw him. He was like, dude, I just want to have like one not shitty run, and like every run with like it was just the moose run. It wasn't like the only tough run, like going from Finger Lake through like the steps and then the gorge and then the burn, to follow the moose. And the burn was brutal this year. Mushers are so good and the dog teams are so good, but everybody's like, yeah, it was fun. But like I flew over that shit. It was crazy, dude. There was like no snow for like dozens of miles. And there's just like this like ice dirt path of ice and rocks and trees. And it was like the gnarly, like you would never go on a run through that kind of terrain in training. It's like you'd be like, no, this is ridiculous. We're not going to take the team out on this. But It's like the Iditarod. We're going to do, it's like we'll just do it once a year and they're 300, 200 miles in or 150 miles in or whatever. But yeah, it was just a lot of tough runs, for everybody. But, everyone only talks about the moose, but the moose dwarfs everything else that was still significant, all those tough runs.
So yeah, like on that note of switching subjects, and we'll not go into lose too much time on the moose, and we've done our fair share of chat on Dallas, but one thing that stood out to me is, especially going back and listening to some of those rookies and those like back of the Packers, is it seemed like the steps and the gorge were like, I think Laura said, like he finally got to, I guess, to the bottom of the steps and like looked back. He was like, did I just do the steps? Was that the steps? And literally like all the people that were in his, within 5 or 10 mushers each way of him or whatever, they all said the same thing. And I thought that was interesting. Did you have a chance to see, I guess you flew over the steps. Are you able to like see that in detail?
I got to see the trail, that section of trail. It's crazy because it's like in the valley of these mountains, but it's like a super, like, I think it's from glacial history there, that it's just this super bumpy, weird valley floor where there's just these little hills and mountains there's no like just easy path through the valley. It's just like pretty insane that they put a trail through there. That area specifically, Finger Lake into Finger Lake, or leaving Finger Lake and going, from Rainy Pass through the gorge, like the trail is like I can just imagine like the first guys that are like, all right, we're gonna make a trail through these mountains, just right through there. He's like, which one you like? You want to go over the left? Look good to you, or right? And and it's just a crazy impressive that they made it through the Alaska range, man. It's a gnarly mountain range. Anyways, but yeah, the steps, in my experience, I did them 3 times, once in the wrong direction, but they're just like, I think they can be like really trenched out and difficult, and they are like definitely a little bumpy, but it wasn't, going for one, but people crash there, dude. It's a sharp, steep drop, but it's not like a long hill. It's just a quick moment, times 3.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right. So, I asked you to think about some of your favorite stories, storylines, occurrences, whatever you want to call it, of this year's race. And so I thought that maybe you and I could go back and forth and share one in no particular order. And so I figured I would start off to get the conversation going. One of my favorite storylines from this year was Wally Robinson. I love how everything played out about his Iditarod experience. I love how you have someone who had probably given in to the fact that they would never even run the Iditarod again, right? Who 2 months before the race wasn't even thinking about it, was just thinking about his daughter and his son, and have closing out a successful race season for them, right? Getting them ready for the junior Iditarod. And then, the injury to Josh McNeil, and then they're through their friendship, he swoops in and gets to run that team. He gets all that experience for those dogs, and in the process, he wins quite a few awards. And dude, he balled out, man. And so for me, as your average couch musher, that was one of my favorite stories. I was curious about if you had any time with him out there on the trail, or if you were able to get any good look at his dogs, or just anything about Wally that you wanted to talk about.
I was so stoked on Wally. I saw him at almost every checkpoint, and he was I'd always just be shouting out Crooked Creek Kennel and Josh McNeil and repeating that same story you're telling. And he was like up there and stayed up there the whole race. Like he was just there in between like 5th and 15th, like the whole entire time, and he finished in 11th, I think. And just really solid, and did not know that was what his intent. I mean, I don't know if he knew that's what his intentions were, was to do something like that. But like, obviously the dogs were up for it, and he's a master dog man. Like I know it sounds like, oh, he came back and it's first I did right in 23 years or whatever. Dude, the guy has had sled dogs for like 30 years. So, he's lives in Nenana. He doesn't live in Anchorage. Like he lives in like some tough country, and is out there with his dogs on the trail every winter for 3 decades. So, and then I didn't really know the extent of his experience. And then it slapped me right in the face watching him run this race. You're like, oh, this guy's like, he wasn't even like sitting, like there was never one time that I saw him that he was just like he just looked like a totally comfortable, confident with this, like her whole situation, making his schedule and feeding his dogs, caring for the dogs, and just deciding how long to run and rest. He just was super perfectly dialed in, and it was cool to see. And he's super humble about it, doesn't have, and yeah, I just, one of the total gems of the stories of this race was that, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I just am super impressed. I know that it's not like he ran the race in 01 or whatever it was and hasn't done anything. But to pull off a competitive race like he did, and
he won what award, Brendan? It was
he won
most improved musher.
Most improved, 40th in 01 to 11th. And then he won the Leonard Seppala Humanitarian Award. He finished with 14 dogs, so he only dropped 2.
The most in the race.
That was the most. The next closest, no one else had 14. No one else had 13. The next closest was 12. And I was looking at that real quick just to give you perspective. 1, 2, three, 4 teams finished with 12. So it's impressive what he did with a group of dogs that he had limited experience and time on the runners with. That to me, it's just like the whole entire story. And like I think you hit on a really important piece with like that makes it like the icing on the cake to the stories. He is such a humble dude. He just like, I mean, I've never even spoke to him, but just watching him on all the different interviews, all the different insider, watching the banquet at the end, him accepting those awards, going on stage, he is just so humble. And I don't know how you could not root for a guy like that. So for me, I mean, we could talk more about it, but for me, that was one of my favorite stories from this year's race. And I thought that was a good one for us to lead off with.
Yeah. I'll do one of the race and one of like my experience on the checkpoint, but like Ryan Reddington, like basically deciding for a number of reasons to just not have a competitive race. And Unilocleat, you know, maybe his dogs just weren't up for it or whatever. But then he got back out there. He was rested at Unilocleat for a long time. I don't know how long, but
I got that for you. If I recall, I think it was shy of 24 hours.
Yeah, and so he you know, can then march down the trail and was going super fast the whole time and went and finished his race. Okay, I want to shout out Will Rhodes, who had probably the fastest run times of the entire Iditarod for like several legs of the race. And yes, he did take his dogs on 8+ hour rest several times, but hey, it's pretty fun going 9 miles an hour down the whole trail, I bet. Not many people get to experience that, so that was kind of cool. And then I remember, like, just to give you an idea of like volunteers, like I met a couple volunteers in New Lotto from Portland, and they just like, you know, are wearing like not the biggest winter gear I've ever seen, but they're out there, you know, they're out there and wearing layers, and you know, you just tough it out and running in front of dog teams, parking them, and you know, they come down up to Alaska to do this for 5 days and then go back down to Portland, you know, people like that. And they've been doing it for multiple years. And it was just cool to meet some of these people. There was this guy in White Mountain. I can't remember his name, but he was turning 75 and he looked like he was like 55, and he was out there raking straw and like, you know, managing the checkpoint. And he's from Idaho and retired, and he was just out there just solo, just vibing, volunteering for the Iditarod in White Mountain. It's just cool. It's cool, like the stories of those folks, and they've all, like, a lot of people have been doing it for a long time. So we had a really good time, me and the volunteers, connecting.
Nice. I love it, man. I'm sure you had a great time with them, and you know, the background that we have, just like where we come from, you know, I remember even just like while you were at your race, just kind of interacting with the volunteers and having a good time. Everyone is like so friendly and talkative, and well, maybe not talkative, but like once you initiate that conversation, it's just like it's a breath of fresh air to get someone to talk to. So I remember that when we were, you know, doing that. So I'm sure I'm sure you had a good time doing that, and especially at some of those checkpoints where maybe you get dropped off and you're by yourself. You know, I'm sure you're like looking for some human connection, if you will.
Yeah, the two dudes running Cripple, they've been doing it there for many years, and they do Iditarod too. Those guys were both live in Homer, and they come up. They work 2 weeks out on these remote checkpoints of Iditarod in southern route and Cripple in the northern route, and But yeah, it just put an entire like 10, 15 years of work into these places.
That's crazy. So is there anything else that you want to bring up before I bring up my next
Yeah, you go for
storyline?
your next. I brought up like 7, so
Yeah. That's fair. I don't feel like that was 7. That was like a little half sentence here, a little half sentence there, but okay. The next one I wanted to go to, and I was really interested in getting your perspective on this, is and it wasn't necessarily like a storyline that a lot of people were talking about, but it affected 2 different mushers, and that was dogs not enjoying running on the sea ice. And we saw that it affected Deke. We saw that it affected Sean Williams. And it was at 2 different points of the race. Deke, going from, this is where going from Shaktoolik to Koyuk, he went out and Deke.
No,
Yeah.
I was leaving a New Lotto.
Oh, you're right. Excuse me. Thank you for correcting me there. Nulato. So
I was
yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's why you're the guy that knows everything, and I just like ask the questions. So tell me just about that. Like, did you witness the dogs not enjoy that, or just first of all talk about Deke and if you saw that or not?
My understanding was, yeah, his team was crushing it. I mean, like just doing great, taking it super easy. I think he was near 20th place.
Yep.
Maybe about to start to make his move down in the top 15, and try to and his dogs, I saw them there. They were just like super jovial and they didn't look tired at all. And then they left and you see him out there just not moving, like 8 or 10 miles out from New Lotto. And we were at the checkpoint just like, yo, like, that's weird. And, you know, uh, we just waited and we knew he was fine, but we didn't know for sure. And we were a little scared. And so there were some people out on the trail and we were able to, send them out there and they had the ability to, let us know if there was a serious problem. And it wasn't a serious problem. It was, I talked to Deke about it. I don't know how much he's told like the public, and I don't want to be like telling, all the
His story
details if it's not, it's his story to tell or whatever. But yeah, the dogs kind of got a little spooked. And I don't know, it's definitely, I don't know. He was perplexed at the whole thing. Like it was total mental thing. Like the dogs just kind of, had some kind of mental decision and just like, I'm not gonna, and he was like, I'm not gonna sit here and, if you guys don't want to do it, then fine. You can't push a rope. And they went back to New Lotto. And when I left him, he was planning on getting back out there and trying to run again. But then by the time I checked into the internet, that wasn't the case. He had ended his race. So I don't know what happened after that. But yeah, it's could be a genetic thing, could be, but it's a mystery, dude. They're not driving cars here, these are like beings, and they have feelings and emotions and insecurities just like any of us have. And, it's a combination of some of those things happened out there. Yeah.
So he's out of Fairbanks. Is that like, is running on frozen water not something that is in his terrain there in the Fairbanks area?
It has nothing to do with that. Yeah. I mean, I think I remember hearing something about how there was a shift in the ice The ice,
Okay.
like, like did a settle. It settled, and it just, a little crack, and that was partially, had an effect on the dogs. But anyways, they're on rivers all the time, like for
Okay.
several hundred miles every winter on rivers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious if it was
Yeah.
like a result of, sometimes we hear, so and so musher struggled this year because where they trained it was cold and the race conditions were warm. And so I was just
Right.
curious if it was something similar to conditions that they haven't
Yeah.
experienced or what. And so would you also say, well, I guess like I want to follow up on Sean Williams as well, because like where Sean experienced it with his dogs, for me, again, Couch Musher McGee over here, it's even much more of a head scratcher because he scratched there out of Gullivan on the way to White Mountain. And at that point, he's already experienced, whoops, let's close that. At that point, he's already experienced the same thing that we're talking about with Deke and Nulato. He's already experienced that going out of Shaktoolik to Koyuk. And so, again, maybe you know more about what Sean experienced than I do. It'll also be his, we'll go ahead and give a plug. It'll also be his story to tell on the next podcast coming up on 2 days on Thursday, April 4th. We might do a live, we might not. We'll see what happens. Back to reality. So I'm just curious if you can provide some details on Sean or just your thoughts on what he was experiencing there.
Yeah, I am looking forward to talking with him. I mean, I don't even, look. The reality is, let's just keep it in check. Like, it was a bummer, and it's not what the result that Sean or any of us wanted for him and his dogs, but did not have to go through what Calvin and Isaac and, Hunter had to go through. It's just a race. And the dogs are great. They're doing fine. He's fine. He's got a family. His family's fine. He's got kids. His kids are fine. It's just a race. You didn't finish it. Whatever. Maybe we'll do it again. Maybe you won't. It's all good. Just want to preface everything we're about to say with that. Okay. And
okay. All right.
Yeah. Keep things in perspective. But yeah, left Galvin, and then his dogs, didn't go, and then went back to Galvin and hung out for a little while, gave the kids the rides. I think we talked about that last time, maybe.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. And then he went back out many times, and then the dogs got on the sea ice, and, he and they had a conversation, many, 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 many conversations, I think. And, ended up ending his race. And I don't know, everything else is just what you can guess what happened out there. But we're going to talk to Sean. So he can tell instead of us guessing, and, you'll see it in a week or in a couple days.
Yeah. No, I just I thought that just the unfortunate decision of really the dogs to not want to perform on ice was tough for both of them. Deke, we've had him on. Sean, we've talked about him a few times, leading up to the Iditarod, and obviously wanting to root him on. So for that sake, for me, it was disappointing. But no, putting things into perspective, you hit a nail on the head there. Like, the end of the race for those other three had to be a lot more difficult of a pill to swallow. But for me, it was a storyline that I wanted to talk to you about and bring up. So that's why I wrote it down. And so I'll toss it back your way and see if there was anything else on your minds, storyline wise or just race wise, that we haven't talked about. I have many things to fall back on. So if you're,
I mean, you got the four the musher ladies in the top 10 was cool. You've got Amanda, and Jesse Royer and Pete Kaiser are left within like 10 minutes of each other from White Mountain. That was kind of fun for 8th, 9th, and 10th place. And Amanda ended up taking the cake there. And you've got, surprising to see Burmeister scratch in Unilocleat. That was, just kind of happened. And he's had an incredible career, and maybe he'll keep mushing, maybe he won't. We don't know, but that was, big news. Matt Failer, he helped Hunter in his time of need. I read an article about that. I don't know if you saw that, Brennan, but
No, I didn't actually. I mean, I watched the banquet, and he got, let's see, what were his 2 awards? He got at least 2. Sportsmanship Award, Donlin Gold Sportsmanship Award. He got $3,000 and a plaque for that. And he also got the Herbie Nayakpak Memorial Award.
Nayakpak, I believe, is the.
What did I say? I thought I said that.
Nayakpak. I believe
Nayakpak.
Herbie Nayakpak.
Yeah. Anywho. So yeah, he won those 2.
Maybe I'm wrong.
He won those 2. And I watched, him come on stage and give his speech, but can you kind of fill us in a little bit more on what you read in that article?
Yeah. Well, I read in an article that, Hunter had this terrible experience. His dog had passed away, George, and he was, in the middle of the trail and with his dog team, and Matt was like, I just want to get around this team. What's going to, and then he stopped, and you could just see the look on Hunter's face of like, fuck. And so he was like, what's the problem? And they're like, they mushed together to Old Woman Cabin from there, which I think was like another 45 minutes or an hour. And then he was like, I'll stay with you. Well, they took a 6-hour rest, mushed to Unilocleat. He was totally, it could, shoulda, woulda, whatever, but he was thinking about being competitive. He was thinking about top 10. And he was competitive, and he finished 13th, I think, or 12th. But he was thinking about trying to finish higher. And then the second he ran into that larger than life, larger than the race situation, it was a no-brainer. So that was cool. I think he's won that award. He's always just been he seems like he's just always got crazy stuff happening around him on the trail, and but clearly he's a good friend to anybody out there, and it was I think in some ways that award is just as good as finishing up there in the front and everybody in the race, whether they're rushers or volunteers or whatever, we just all are thankful for that and excited to see Hunter in the Kobuck. And that was a cool storyline. And
just to follow up,
I got another storyline too, but go ahead.
One sec though. So you mentioned Matt Failer, and his awards. I was just looking that up. So he has won. He's no guest going up on stage there at the banquet in Nome. So he's won the Musher's Choice Award. He's won the Most Improved Musher 3 times. He's won Sportsmanship now, I think I just butchered that. He's won sportsmanship now twice. And he's also won most inspirational now twice. So kudos to Matt. That was definitely a great story. And you know, I'm sure for Hunter going through that was really difficult, and to have someone kind of sacrifice what you just, like you said, sacrifice their more competitive race, I think says a lot about Matt. And I went back when we weren't sure what was going on with Hunter. I went back and was looking at the replay, and there were quite a few different mushers that were in that pack, right? Where whether it was a little bit in front of Hunter or a little bit behind him. And so, Matt was the first one after it happened, but I just think that, definitely a respectful thing to do. You get this race once a year. You put a lot of time and effort into it. He's coming off having a child. He's trying to have a competitive race, and he did what was right for the situation. So hats off to Matt. He deserved those awards. So sorry. Proceed with what you were about to say. I know they were that the thoughts are just falling like rain. You're like, oh man, everything's flowing right now.
Well, Jessica Kleka, she finished her third Iditarod, I think, and she was 16 weeks pregnant. Bacon. She said this in the I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on the weeks, but she was certainly, pretty pregnant. She was pretty pregnant, and that's I don't know. It's I've never personally been pregnant, but I'm told it's pretty hard. That's you've been around pregnancies a little bit more than I have, Brendan. Maybe you can speak to it, but running the Iditarod 3 months pregnant or more is
yeah.
something.
I can't speak to what it must be like, but I can.
You're like, look, man.
let me tell you about a firsthand experience, okay? No, but obviously having my wife, who we have our 2-year-old, the idea of anything physical like an Iditarod at that junction, it just seems. I don't even really. I don't know if I have like the words to put around, wrap my head around it. But for me on my end, there is just a ton of respect and admiration for what she did. I think that it would be easier to do that not knowing that you're pregnant. I think like if Jess knew she was pregnant, she would have just been like, I'm pregnant. I'm probably going to sit this thing out this year. But my wife is not Alaska strong. No offense. I love her. And damn, Jessica Gleka is
for sure
absolutely Alaska hardened in every sense of of it. So, I just
should be inspirational to some pregnant moms out there. Look, you're thinking about going on that one, that 20-minute walk. You should go on that walk, maybe, because
it'll be interesting.
It's gonna be a strong baby.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fitting for her, right? We've talked about her leading up to the Iditarod and the various races that she was in. All of her social media and her pictures she's posting with her little one. I forget her daughter's name. Lucy. There, I was going to say. So, like, she clearly is, I can't even, I'm wrapping my head around it. She's a veterinarian, right?
You better believe it.
Okay, so she's veterinarian, a mother, and a musher, and she's pregnant. And as I continue to just go down that list, it's just like continues to strengthen my statement of admiration and just complete respect and almost like utter disbelief that she can just do that and do it so easily. I mean, not easily. Let me take that back.
Yeah, right.
But like,
not easily.
It's just incredible to me that she finished as well as she did. So I'm glad you brought that up. Someone else, what did they say? That'll be quite the story for her child. She got to run the Iditarod with her mom. So she's already done the race. Yeah. And then I do want to go back. You kind of were quick to talk about the race for 8th. I think it was 8, 9, and 10 with Amanda, Jesse, and Pete. So they actually got caught in a storm. Are you aware of the whole storm thing?
Yeah. I don't know how intense the storm was, but I briefly chatted with Amanda about it. She said it was, it wasn't. It was just, it was some classic coastal shit. But yeah, I don't know the details of it.
Got you. And then someone made a comment in here about Paige and her run this year. I mean, 5th place, dude. And I don't know if you watched any of her interviews.
You talking to me right now?
You talking to me? Are we gonna go there for a minute?
We're gonna go 5th place for the Squid Acres.
For Squid Acres, yeah.
We love the squid.
Hey, I like what we're talking about here. Squids. Let's go, dude. So yeah, did you watch any of her interviews or not so much?
Not a lot. I heard that her final interview is hilarious from Greg himself, and I haven't watched it yet though. But I saw Paige at a lot of checkpoints, and she was very friendly, and I would come to her with great, and when she got to New Lotto, I was like, "You have the fastest time here. You're 30 minutes faster than the 3 mushers in front of you," and she was like, "What? Really?" It's like, yeah, and she's just, it's an amazing run, just an amazing run, and how fun. Look, it's in some ways, it's got to feel pretty good to just take your 5th place and not push, too hard or anything, and just be like, and she still pushed, obviously. 5th place is 5th place, dude. But yeah, I mean, Squid Acres, man, those guys got some amazing dogs, couple of great mushers, 2 great mushers, not one, dude.
Yeah, I was it just stood what stood out to me about listening and watching her videos was she's just doing her thing, dude. She's just in Paige world, right? And it's funny to hear you say that at one of the checkpoints you told, hey, you just had the fastest time by 30 minutes. She literally talks about that in one of her interviews. She's like, yeah, I've come into a couple checkpoints, feel like my dogs aren't doing that well, and that wasn't really that good of a run. And then people keep coming up to telling me oh, you just had the fastest time into the checkpoint. And so I think maybe
that's pretty funny.
I forget which guest I was talking to about that. I think she kind of talked about that a little bit. I forget if it was, I think maybe it was Unilacleed. It could have been also in Koyuk as well. But I was waiting for her to maybe be like, you know what? We're pretty far into the race. Maybe I should kind of push it and see what I could do. And yeah, she, like you said, she got 5th place running her race. And she didn't really have to. I don't think she was looking at other mushers and altering her decision making. I think she stood true to what she was
It's
doing.
true.
And
You're right.
super impressive. And how many dogs did she finish with? She finished with 9. Okay. And she had 14 up to Caltag, and then that's when she lost a few. But yeah, I was super impressed with her race as well. And then also you kind of, again, you were quick with it, but I did want to hit on Paige, Milla, Amanda, and Jesse all getting there. The ladies there, top 10. Super impressive to see that. I was impressed with all of the ladies this year, honestly.
Absolutely. Josie, rookie of the year.
Dude, I finally
Did I call that shit or not, dude?
Dude, come on. We've been talking about this for a hot minute, man. I remember when we had her on and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said anything.
Lock it in.
Her, but
lock it in, dude.
It was, let's see who gave her so Will was the next closest rookie at 20 in 22nd. And I wonder what the total hours is there. But yeah, I feel like she kind of had it there for a while. I know that Gabe was also close, but I guess technically they don't say that it's her rookie run since she's already run it once before. She was still a rookie in the sense of not having finished the race, but she wouldn't have been up for the award had she gotten faster than Josie, which is something that I learned talking to Josh McNeil. I thought that when I had him on first, I was like, oh, well, it's going to be between these two. And he was correcting me that that wasn't the case. And then, even at the back of the pack, I just want to talk about Anna Hennessy and Laura Kittleson, man. Like, every single interview that they did, it was just like, I enjoyed their interviews. I enjoyed their fresh perspective. Anna just seems like just like happy-go-lucky, I guess is how I want to describe her. Just, again, this is only based off of me watching her interviews. And then Laura just seems so like level-headed is kind of how I would describe it. She, to me, when I heard her interviewing, she didn't sound like a rookie. She just sounded like someone who's out there doing the job. And so I do want to just kind of give some shout outs there to those ladies. And I don't think we missed anyone. I want
to give some shout outs.
Oh, we got also talk. We didn't say anything about Anna. She's the only. I was going to say, oh man, I would feel bad if we didn't talk about all of them. So we also got to throw out Anna. I know she wasn't happy about getting the number 2 number and being the first one going. We talked about that, Christy and I. She's like, yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but there's just, I guess, maybe a little more nerves that come with being that first one to go. And like, I think Christy was kind of talked about it a little bit, like, they're not going out there to win the race. So, just knowing that you're going to have some mushers that are going to, like, there's only mushers are passing you when you start where you start, when you're the number 2 bib. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on the ladies?
Nope. Shout out to Jeff Dieter and his incredible, most epic run ever to come in 4th place after, I think he finished 12th or something. That's the closest he's been. And that's just an insane run. And everybody around him in the mushing, they were blown away by his team. They were just, it was in every checkpoint he ever went to his team was just screaming and barking, coming and going. And yeah, masterclass by Jeff Dieter. I'd say, shout out to Jeff Reed and Joshua Robbins and Laura Eklund running a great race. Ben Good, we're hope to have on soon. Did awesome. And gosh, he was also I think.
Well, while you're thinking of it, I want to hop in there real quick and just bring up, because I did have it on my notes, was to talk a little bit about the Red Lantern. And I'm excited to talk to, I think we're trying to get Jeff on. I don't think we've quite synced up with him yet, but that is in the works. But for a while there, I thought that Joshua Robbins was looking like he was going to be the Red Lantern, especially this was kind of around the time where, who was it? Where Bryce, he made it to Unilocleat and then Scratch. So after that, I was like, okay, well, right now it's looking like Joshua Robbins
going to talk about.
Yeah, so we'll follow back up on that. But I was a little bit concerned with Jeff when he was having some issues. I forget exactly where that was. Maybe you can fill in this
safety,
story.
Dude.
That was in safety.
Yeah,
so,
the last checkpoint.
Yeah, dude. Do you have any intel, or do you have any info on that?
I don't have a ton of info, but
okay.
I think it was like it's pretty windy. Teams were struggling. You're just kind of getting your head docked in their head. But yeah, it was the toughest run of his race, leaving White Mountain.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we'll get him on and we can talk to him a little bit more about that. Obviously, I was glad to see that he was able to get the team to Nome. And so I'm sure he was happy as well. And, you know, I think that he will have some good stories to tell if we're able to get him on. But yeah, let's go back and talk for a second about Bryce Mumford.
Yeah, Bryce Mumford and Aaron Ultimus I wanted to talk about.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that they both did awesome. They both, came up. I don't think either one of them had ever mushed up here in Alaska. They made it pretty far, for Ruby and Unilocleat. I think they learned a lot, and I hope to get them both on the podcast so they can tell us the story from their perspective, because I don't really know what all went down, but I have my guesses, but it'd be better to hear from them. We've been in touch with both of them. I've talked to Bryce a lot on the trail and Aaron as well on the trail and before the race. So hopefully we get to hear from them.
Yeah. A couple things on that. So, we have been trying to get Aaron on, so I'll be interested to get her on. She did an interview. I'm not sure you saw it. She did an interview with Katie Joe in Unilocleat, and man, she had a tough run leading up to her decision there in Ruby to Scratch. And I'll tell you what, just going back and listening to that interview, I have a ton of respect for her doing something like that. Kind of, you're still probably pretty emotional and raw after you make a decision like that. And so kudos to her for kind of letting us as fans hear her story. And gosh, man, she talked about falling off the sled quite a bit, and she talked about dog leader issues, and it just sounded like it was a real struggle for her. So you got to respect someone who's making a decision that is the best decision for her and for her dogs. And after hearing her talk about it there with Katie Joe, I think that it was clear to me that that was the right decision. And then, yeah, dude, I was disappointed that Bryce, unfortunately, wasn't able to finish the race. I know that you and I had kind of been like exchanging messages, and I was like, yeah, dude, have you been having a good time? You chatting with anyone out there? And you listed quite a few of the folks there that were like back of the Packers that you were enjoying your time with. And I think you had mentioned like Bryce listens to the podcast, and I was, so I was excited to just like it's nice to know that folks listen. And I was like, oh man, well, we'll definitely, it's not like we're not rooting for everyone in the race anyways, but it's like, all right, we'll move him up a little. We'll move him up a little bit higher on the priority list or whatever. So I just thought I would follow that up with my perspective on that as well. And then while we've talked about all of the mushers that weren't able to finish the race, except for our boy Connor. And so I don't know if you were able to talk to him either leading up to that decision or afterwards. Obviously, we got a ton of love for him. He came on earlier this year. Any insight there?
I think that he got to his final checkpoint and had some sorenesses with his dogs that all showed up all at once, and there was many of them, is my understanding. I think that if he could redo the way that he left his 24, I'm sure there's a couple things he would do differently. I don't know exactly what his runs were leading into his scratch, but it sounds like he's going to be back. If it's not next year, he will be back. And it was cool to see him out there, man. He's just a positive attitude. Again, it's we feel bad about the scratches, but you got to keep it in perspective, man. It's just he still ran 500 miles with his dogs, plus more maybe. I don't know how far he made it exactly.
He got to Galena.
He ran a long way with his dogs, and they did great, and he didn't want to keep going, and he didn't, so he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, he was Galena, distance from Anchorage to Galena is 5:45, so it's over halfway in. And yeah, on that note, I do want to kind of just we're rooting for everyone out there, honestly. I think part of why we do this podcast is just like getting access to mushers to tell their stories, to support this sport. And so we hate seeing it when someone doesn't finish a race, and just because they don't finish a race doesn't like knock them as a person, as a musher, or anything like that. So I'm excited to get some of these folks on because they've put a lot of work just to get into this year's race, and hopefully some, especially with some of those rookies that weren't able to finish, hopefully we're able to see them some point down the road, get there to know them, and no longer have that rookie status next to their name. So, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I think I'd like to make mine with the closing remarks. I have to pee. But I would say, first off, shout out to Mats Peterson for running a good, solid race. Not the classic Mats with it's not, it wasn't quite in the top 10, but it wasn't in the back of the pack either. Solid race. Just the dogs just were steady and not necessarily the fastest, but steady and solid. And he did right by the dogs. I think he got whacked in the face by a branch or something.
Yeah, he did.
I didn't see the interview, but I just saw the scab on his face, and I was like, "Oh, that looks fun." And then, yeah, shout out finally to the solo sweepstakes race that happened in Chugiak. It's a 64-mile run split up into two 32-mile runs. And shout out to T-Dog race that happened up in Fairbanks, which was really cool. They had I believe they call it a sourdough start, which is where
Dude,
you
I
leave the
love that.
checkpoint and you have like your sled unpacked. You got to pack the sled, booty the dogs, hook up, and the team's on the line, but you got to hook up their tug lines and stuff. And it's like, what a cool idea. Well, I wish I would have loved to pay anything to be there. And we're gonna get someone on the podcast that was there at some point soon, and I want to hear about it. And next weekend's Cobuck, and we'll talk about that before the race happens, hopefully. And Brendan, closing remarks.
Well, I have more to talk about, so I don't know if I'm ready to close it out. But I guess
I gotta pee. If you don't want to close it out,
I guess if you
gotta go and pee and come back. I'll go and pee and come back. That's no problem.
No, it's all good. I think, we're about an hour 15 in on this, and I think that.
Oh yeah, is that okay? I guess we didn't start on time. I forgot about that part.
So, I think we've done a good job covering the race. I think that, if there are any questions, of stuff we haven't answered or gone over, as we continue to have guests on, I have a feeling that a lot of those questions will get answered. So,
and you can ask us those questions and we'll answer them. So ask us and then we answer them. It's crazy. You ask questions, we answer them.
So you got questions, we got answers. Okay, what are we doing? We going back to that the Italian thing?
It's so much easier.
What are you doing?
It's so much easier if you just ask the questions instead of us just babbling. So,
well, yeah. So, closing remarks are this, Sean. Thank you again for just being the best co-host there is around town. All right, we'll start
don't
there.
Do this to me. I don't like this.
And secondly, we will be going. We're going to see what Sean Williams. He's our next guest for our next podcast. We're going to see what his logistics are, but be on the lookout for an announcement. If we can pull it off, I think we're going to try to do that live as well. And that'll be Thursday, April the 4th. And I think that's it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode.